Welcome back to Digital Ag Global, your go-to podcast for everything ag tech. Hello to everybody around the world and here in Canada. So we're going to start today with a discussion about one of the biggest challenges in modern agriculture as we strive to reduce risk, increase yields, enhance profitability, is that we're still managing fields as if they were all uniform from one corner to the other. Yet most farmers know that within a single field, there could be dramatic differences in the soil productivity, their most moisture holding capacity, nutrient availability, and ultimately profitability and productivity. So the question is no longer whether variability exists. The question is how growers can practically use that variability to make better decisions and improve returns on every acre. I'm joined here by my co-host, Yurii Kovalchuk. Yurii?
Thank you, Clyde. Thank you, audience. Thank you for sticking around and listening to our podcast. And yes, today we're going to talk a lot about precision ag, about variable rate technology, and field variability. Precision ag has been around for quite some time, but the adoption rates sometimes lags behind due to different reasons: complexity, actual ROI. And today we have a great guest, and we're going to discuss a great technology, SWAT Maps, and how it helps farmers to build variable rate maps, manage better seeding, and manage inputs that are going into the soil in a more efficient way. Before we jump into our discussion today, I just want to mention and remind our audience that Digital Ag Global, as a podcast, as a platform for discussing agtech innovations, is offering partnership opportunities. So if someone who is listening to us want to become a part of this network, have ability to speak, have access to all the insights and our network, feel free to drop us a line and we'll help you to become a part of Digital Ag Global. With this said, let's introduce our guest today.
Yeah, joining us today is Cory Willness, CEO of Croptimistic, the company behind SWAT Maps. Croptimistic has helped growers and agronomists move beyond simple field averages by providing practical management zones that support variable rate decisions and measurable economic outcomes. Cory, welcome to the show. Could you start by telling us about Croptimistic, the origins of SWAT Maps, and what problem you originally set out to solve?
Sure. Croptimistic is an ag tech company. We started in 2018. Our head office is in Saskatchewan, Canada. We now work internationally in companies like the United States and Australia. And we're a bootstrap startup. And in 2021, we did take on some investors. We have one investor based out of Calgary, Alberta, called Forge Capital. And our main product that we started with, that basically is the foundation of our business, is SWAT Maps. And that's a soil, water, and topography map. It integrates different types of soil layers and turns them into a single map that we use to manage fields for soil applied products. And you wouldn't have a business if it was just about a map. So we built a whole platform around it called the SWAT ecosystem, which is hardware, tools, support, and services to sort of enable a front to back service. What's the initial problem? I like that question because I don't think there was one main problem. I mean, yes, obviously we're managing field variability with precision agriculture, but on the services side, there was hundreds of little problems to solve in order to go and execute in the field. So that's a little bit about it.
Yeah. So really, I think you're trying to help growers go to the next level in terms of their ability to manage field by field and within those fields to maximize their outcomes. I guess a lot of farmers in Canada, North America, et cetera, have had capacity in order to vary the rate of fertilizer application, the amount of seed that they put in, acre by acre, but without understanding the capacity of the field, acre by acre, they've not been able to take advantage of that, of those technologies like section control and things like that.
Yeah, I guess the equipment is obviously a necessity, and depending on the type of operation that you're trying to execute, I mean, you can have things that are just planters really, and just maybe ability to vary seed or a couple seed varieties or hybrids, right up to massive air carts on 80-foot wide bars, and they're varying 6 different products. Could be fertilizers or soil amendments, and different things like that. So yeah, the equipment is obviously necessary. Even the sprayer technology keeps getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they have to make that significant investment into having equipment that can apply at the capabilities that they need for their products, and so on. Yeah.
So I think that in agronomy and crop production in Canada, at least that's sort of my experience, there's been a lot of emphasis on things like soil tests to gauge the nutrient levels in soils, and focus on that as a key variable. But you've really taken the study of topography, the hills and the valleys in a field to another level.
Yeah, topography is one of the SWAT acronyms, and it's very important. But I always say that everything is intertwined, right? You can't talk about topography without talking about soils. Like the hills are typically thinner topsoils, and water shedding areas, and depressions are thick topsoils and high organic matter and collecting water. And I noticed even on social media, people are posting that their land is flat, and yet as they're driving across it, you could see water laying in certain areas, and other areas they're driving around. So it doesn't matter what type of landscape you're in, unless it's tabletop flat with tile drainage. I mean, you're going to have topography influences.
Yeah. So when a farm comes on as a client, and I take it farms are primarily your clients, although I think you do deal with agribusinesses as well. What's the process for a farmer to get started in that business relationship with you and to be able to utilize SWAT Maps?
Yeah, our company and any of our 80 international partners that execute SWAT Maps, I mean, we typically start with our SWAT box and our SWAT RTK system that would map field soil properties. It can work autonomously, although it's we found certain challenges with that as well. Can also use layers like soil color, like in some areas, getting soil properties isn't that valuable if the soils are very consistent texture. But the most important layer is definitely that high accurate elevation data, either with RTK or LiDAR or something like that, where you can model out the topography and how the water flows work. So that's all typically done by a service provider. So that pain's taken away. A farmer doesn't have to do that work themselves.
And essentially you're giving growers then a picture of their field, but there's got to be a way for them to translate that picture, and I assume it's electronic and not just a paper map, to allow their equipment to utilize that to turn off or on, or vary rates, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, in general, the first step from a digital map perspective is them seeing their SWAT map. So that's the advantage of having high grade elevation with everything, is you can see it in 3D every single time, right? Very few companies have the ability to see everything in 3D because we have that layer. And we find that they really relate to that map. They very often, you know, you'll have a father and a son maybe farming, and the son loves the technology and wants that interested in it. And once they see the map, it's the father that says, yeah, that's the field, right? Like I can see this hilltop over here and, you know, the salty area over there, and they completely relate to the fundamentals of the map. And what you're referring to is like the prescription out the other end, right? So the prescription is a file that you don't really see. It's just, you see it when it's being applied. And that's sort of like where the rubber hits the road when you're going across the field and you drive into a low productivity salty area and you see all the rates of fertilizers go down, and you know that's where you want to see it, not a digital map.
So essentially you're helping growers put the costly inputs that they are buying where they'll do the most good, and focus that production on the areas that are going to give the best yields and returns.
Yeah, and I think in the early years of variable rate, people were very focused on this rate conversation. But that's evolving now, and it's like, well, maybe that area needs a different product. Maybe the rate doesn't change. Maybe you need an enhanced efficiency fertilizer that reduces nitrogen losses in these wet areas of the field, right? And or you know, maybe you need a different hybrid style. You know, you need something that's more flood tolerant in one area and it's drought tolerant on the top of a sandy hill. So yeah, essentially you are, and even the concept of management needs to come into play, right? Like just don't variable rate stuff and that solves your problems. Like you learn what the problems are, right? And then change management, or, you know, like there's lots of things you can do to help make your fields better.
Yeah. Yurii, maybe you could hop in and talk, you know, maybe a little bit, you know, sort of how you see those issues of translating that 3D mapping of, you know, farm fields and translate that into all the various kinds of equipment that are out there and make it work from a practical point of view.
For sure. And I just wanted to circle back a little bit and talk about in early days of SWAT Maps. And I have a kind of quick question to Cory. Why you decided to go through the route of or path of having a soil level data and not utilize, I don't know, satellite imagery to build some sort of maps, precision ag maps for farmers? Because generally speaking, in precision agriculture, there are, I would say, three fundamental approaches to building any map. You can use different type of sensing devices. One of them satellite, another one is usually soil grid test, and the third one is something, I guess, SWAT box provides, analytics on a soil level or a ground level, where you actually go and scan with LiDAR and other camera-based technologies to understand and build a 3D map or other type of map for this field. So the question is, why you go this route of having actually near ground scanning rather than I don't know, drone scanning or satellite scanning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really important question. Like, I mean, what we really wanted as our base layer that helps understand the why of everything is, you know, something that defines the SWAT properties of the field. So satellite imagery, there really is nothing that will take it down to a soil level. Like we've seen lots of the outputs from there, and some of them can be okay. But in general, the concept behind a lot of satellite imagery is like a yield potential type map, a model of the yield or that type of thing. But that doesn't define the why. So, for example, it's very common, like on my home quarter here, my hills will yield similarly to my depressions. They're not the highest yielding parts of the field. They probably yield about 30% less than the field average soil. Why? Is because the hills are kind of sandy and they kind of dry out a little bit, and the depressions tend to always flood a little bit, right? So from a satellite or yield-based approach, it's like those low yield areas are a zone, but in reality, they're not, right? They're completely different, and that's what SWAT helps understand that why, where it's like these hills would be severely sulfur deficient. These depressions, there'll be thousands of pounds per acre of sulfur down there. They don't need any at all, ever. Right. So most of the remote sensing stuff, it's also like a lot of it's like a proxy for something, it's like, well, using AI, we can infer that the soil moisture is a certain thing. Well, I mean, why not just go measure it, right? Like most of the remote sensing based stuff, in my opinion, is just a reason to not go and get the soils data. So we just didn't find anything, and never have, that's actually made it as good as a SWAT map. And once you've had a SWAT map, it's like you're never going to settle for something that's a C- or even a B+. You only have to map it once anyway. Like the field never changes, right? So you only have to map it once anyway. You go get that stable map, and then you have that, and that's underlying in everything. You can pull any type of layer from any type of sensor, and people will always relate it back to the SWAT property. So, well, even soil moisture sensing now, we have a probe in the top of the hill, and one in the mid slope, and one in the depression, right? So hope that answers your question.
For sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And from what we've seen working with our clients who utilize remote sensing as a part of any sort of analytics to create variable rate maps for seeding, for fertilizer application, or just create a productivity zones for field. What we've seen, remote sensing is an important part of any algorithm that creates these maps, but also we've seen a lot of use cases where different layers intertwine or connect with each other. So you take soil grid tests, you create one map based on this, and then you have your NDVI map of this field, and then you combine it with this, and then you create kind of a higher level analytics based on different layers that are combined, and then you can have more advanced forecasting analytics and have a better picture of what's going on in the field. But I agree to some extent that fields are not static, but they stay similar throughout seasons. But it also depends on whether what type of crops you're growing, and whether you use cover crops, and all of that can also depend specifically on different elements in the soil. And to kind of finalize my statement, the question is, SWAT map is a basic layer that stays the same. Do you guys utilize actual soil tests to kind of build on top of it, or not?
Yeah, so to soil test to get the actual soil properties and nutrient levels and different things about the soil. We sample like the extremes on one end and the extremes on the other end, and 3 sets of samples in between. So the whole breadth of the variability in the field. And some of those things don't really change much. You don't have to pay to get an organic matter sample every year if you don't want. You could just test mobile nutrients, or depending on what people do. So yeah, the soil test is really important for that. And like in remote sensing, I'm like it's like the report card of what happens in a field every year, and it's influenced by like hundreds of factors, right? So, depression in one year might be the highest yielding part of a field if it's a drier year. It might be a complete loss in a wet year, right? So you're always managing towards the weather. And so, any in-crop prescriptions or yield models, like we still use remote sensing for those things, as most people would. Yeah.
So, Cory, maybe you could talk a little bit about your customers and maybe talk about the size of your customer base, but also what kinds of results are they seeing? I mean, obviously you're successful in your business. Obviously, people are seeing results that are encouraging, and so maybe you could talk a little bit about the people that are your client base.
Sure. Well, in Western Canada, we deal direct to farmer. So we have actually 500 or so of our own farm clients. And then our partner network, which is much larger in acreage than us, would have like thousands of farm customers. So we get good feedback from them as well. And yeah, we recently conducted a survey this spring, actually. And it was an anonymous survey, so we feel like it's accurate. And farmers recorded a 6-to-1 return on investment, or what they spend in annual fees. So we're pleasantly surprised at that, and I feel like it's that's really where you get your answer. I could sit and tell you I did field trials and we found such and such, but it's really the customer, I think, that defines your ROI.
Yeah, and so. I mean, just to be clear, you're saying that for every dollar they're spending on SWAT Maps, they're getting $6 in return. Is that's phenomenal?
Yeah, well, we did separate the question into two parts. One was what's monetized, like actual dollars in your pocket through, yields and quality and saving costs and that types of things. And that was 4-to-1. Okay. And then it's like other benefits that you receive, and that they gave us a 2-to-1 there. So like things like even crops and, better establishment with VR seed. And, there's a big long list of things that, they're not just trying to get yield all the time. I know that's where everybody focuses, but sometimes, for a seed grower or somebody that straight cuts the entire farm, like they want a nice even crop. And so that has value as well.
Yeah. So there's terms like maximum economic yield, like, the last ton or bushel of crop you grow isn't necessarily the most profitable. So, Cory, do you also, are there sort of some intangibles like that growers have, let's say, greater peace of mind, they feel they're facing, reduced risk, those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. That's important part of taking away the pain for farmers. I mean, I think on average, I don't remember exactly, but it's about $160 an acre that they spend on like products they put in the soil every year. And so for lots of people, that's millions of dollars, right? And so they, in that survey, 85% of the farmers say SWAT Maps improve their confidence and reduce their stress. So it's just, they just feel really good about the plans and how things go down. And the more that they do it every year and year out, the trust gets established, and they're like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. Right. So, it definitely takes away that pain of spending your millions of dollars.
Yeah. So in terms of, obviously the customer is critical in building a business as you have, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how you were able to grow your company as you were. I think you said it kind of grew, what organically is the term, but I mean that means that you've made some good decisions along the way, and maybe you've avoided some bad ones. Maybe you could share a little bit about some of uh, your learnings along the way, because there's a lot of people that are either entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs or funders and investors out there that could maybe learn uh, uh, gain from your experience.
Well, we didn't start as a tech company, so I grew up on a farm and then was an agronomist for 8 years, and then I started a crop consulting business in 2003, and then was serving farmers and trying to help them make a profit on their farms. And so that's really where the start came, was being a user. As precision agriculture evolved, I mean, I was very passionate about it right from day one. And as time went on, got figured out how to integrate that into our business and conduct the service with the farmer. So, by the time we became an ag tech company in 2018 and started seriously build out software and hardware tools, you could say we'd already established the business model and we're users. It's not like we had some idea. It's like we knew exactly what people would pay for, knew exactly how it needed to be delivered. Now let's just build a platform that can go and do this faster and easier and cheaper and, make it all work. And so, that's our journey to, you could start talking about all the tools and stuff that you built, but mostly it's just to scale, right? Lots of people start with the scale side and they looked at us and said, well, that doesn't scale. You got to make soils maps and you got to, soil test a field, and you got to, well, yeah, but if that's what works, let's start with what works and then let's figure out how to scale it. And so that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously you have a significant advantage in that you come from a farm background. And I think not all the entrepreneurs that we talk to on the podcast, have that experience. How important is it to actually just talk to farmers as much as you can?
Yeah, I don't I guess I hear that a lot, and I would say, yeah, okay, it's important, but much like Steve Jobs, nobody said I need an iPhone, right?
Right.
So I didn't really actually talk to my customers and they said, this is what we need. I figured it out myself. This is what they needed to do. They didn't know. They didn't see the vision for the future. So I don't necessarily believe that, everyone feels like being connected to the farmer is the most important part, but it's not really. The most important part is having a vision for something that they're doing that could be done better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So I think it was Henry Ford who said that if I talked to customers when he was developing the Model T, if I talked to customers and asked them what they want, they would have said bigger, faster horses. So yeah, you've taken it to a different level. So we have I think a bit of a global audience here, people coming from various scales of agriculture, from large farms as they are in North America, where 5,000 acres isn't really that big a farm anymore, to areas where 1 to 2 acres can be a farm, and there are many farms in those geographies. Are there aspects of what you're doing that could be utilized in these kinds of landscapes where you have hundreds of small 1 or 2 acre or 1 hectare farms all together in an area? Are there, because a lot of the work that's being done is remote sensing, and I'm not sure it's delivering the results that people want.
Yeah, well, I would say, we predominantly target field crops on large acreage. That would be our primary customer. Now, an average field size in Western Canada might be 160 to 180 acres, whereas in Eastern Canada, they're U.S. Midwest, they might be 80 acres fields.
Yeah.
So, in general, that type of production system where you're going across the field, you can still manage the variability with your equipment. Once you get really small, like I would argue, your field is like the zone, right? Like
Right.
I take a field and turn it into 10 zones. The hills are a zone and they might be 10 acres of a field. Well,
Right.
if I was able to manage that as a smallholder, my hill would be my one field, and I'd be out seeding that early and have different crops, and that might have irrigation up there. So you probably wouldn't need like precision application equipment, right? You already are managing it on its own. So I would argue the smaller you get, the more you're actually just managing the zones. You probably don't need significant precision equipment to do that.
Yeah, that's so a smallholder farmer is going to be very intimately familiar with every square meter of his operation. Of course, he probably lives right in the middle of his field as well. So yeah, that's it. Yurii, maybe you'd like to come in at this point.
Well, I would agree that precision ag tools might not make a lot of sense for smallholder farmers, just because they know their field very well. But I just wanted to follow up with the question. We talked a bit about how Cory kind of came up with the idea and scaled it, and how ag background helped or didn't help. But the question I have is how to scale agtech innovation internationally. What does it take to enter a new market, and how to do it successfully? And we talked a bit that you not only work in Canada, you have US presence and Australia presence. So something a lot of our audience is interested in, how to scale agtech innovations internationally. And we've seen a lot of examples where it works very well in one region of the world, but doesn't work that well in somewhere else, even though the farm practices are similar. So that's kind of what I wanted to know.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I would say that we've always thought about that we're going slow, but in a lot of cases, what I think is going slow is still sometimes too fast. But most, I think, people, they expand too fast. And I feel like what you have to do is, anytime you go into a new region, practically, you don't have to go to a different country. You can go into a different region in your own state or province, and things are different. There's different crop types, there's different soil type problems. So the more that we've expanded internationally, we've found like what we do well and what we don't do well. And so you can't just go in guns a-blazing and your product's going to solve everyone's problems, because if that's your attitude, you won't last very long. So I feel like a lot of the markets we've gone to, like the SWAT map itself is a foundational technology, and almost everyone would agree that, yes, this map is excellent and can help us manage some things. The rest of the stuff around our platform is like, it needs work. When you go to other countries, for example, right? Like you go to the US Midwest, they don't farm the same as they have planted. They're hardly putting any fertilizer down at seeding time. They'll variable rate their seed, but may not be a ton of products going on there. They might cover that field 3 times with a fertilizer product during the season. Well, that's a different style of management than what we were designed initially to do. So we don't bolt right in right away. Like we have to learn and adapt. So yeah, I don't claim to be an expert on this. I do feel like we're learning, and as much as we do have traction in other countries, I also feel like we've got a lot of work to do there, like to really fit in and to really become a foundational product in a lot of these other markets, we have work to do.
Yeah. So what are some of the areas where, you've accomplished a lot in terms of advancing precision agriculture? But what are some of the opportunities that are still there? Is there still low-hanging fruit that could even lead to greater performance, or are we kind of getting to that maximum economic yield? Are we going to hit a ceiling at some point, do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure about that. I don't see how there would be a ceiling. I remember when I finished my degree, everyone had that same thought process that we were getting close to our capabilities, and we've blown that out of the water. So, no, I feel like there's lots of opportunity. But I do feel like in some ways the limitation isn't, like, I, as an agronomist and as someone that can build precision applications, it used to be said that, the technology is better than the agronomy. That's the way it was back in, say, like the 2000s. But that no longer is the problem. Like, we can precision apply way higher than anything can do. And so there's very little equipment and very few controllers that actually can precision apply now at what I feel like we're capable of. I think that there's a whole nother level of precision that's still needs to come. And within that is, like, even our own abilities to make better recommendations are getting better and better as well, right? Like, and AI is just really, really increasing the speed of the things that we can do, and there's a lot of technology that can be still integrated too to help this. So, no, I feel like there's lots of opportunity for yield improvements and optimization.
What about you, Yurii? How do you feel about the potential that still exists?
Well, I mean, on one side, you still have a lot of biotech potential. You can come up with a new variety, new type of seeds you're gonna use. It's gonna just bring a better yield and better ROI no matter what. You can spray and pray and still gonna get a good yield. And kind of innovations on a side of biology are still huge. And I think agri-food value chain as a whole is still very much focused on a bio innovation rather than precision tech or precision ag technologies, because that's just how big companies of our world are geared towards. They've been working on new varieties for the last 60 years, and they're still gonna do that. But the beauty of technology innovations, I think that you can, as Cory mentioned, you can go from a field level intelligence to one particular crop level intelligence, and you can not just spot spray. You can have variable rate fertilizer application, but then you can see on a smaller scale and understand what each plant requires to grow specifically good. So those technologies definitely going to improve. The biggest, I wouldn't say challenge, but a barrier, it's easier to buy a new variety that is improved some way and seed it and plant it the old way than to spend hundreds of thousands for a new seeder who can do variable rate seeding and just have 10% yield increase. So that's kind of the question of what's cheaper or what's more cost efficient to implement. AI gonna play a huge role. It's already playing a huge role. I've seen a lot of people from my network, not technical people, not software developers, not data analysts. They just use generative AI stuff, ChatGPT, Claude Code, all of that, to create prescription maps, to create XML files that can be uploaded to your seeder. And that's type of innovation that's going to help us to move forward. So I guess we'll see what's going to win first, but biology is going hand in hand with technology right now.
Well, and I think Yurii raised the issue of the cost of the capital that's invested in Canadian farms in terms of machinery and equipment, which is frankly startling to me. But it's very expensive equipment like air seeders and spray coops and all the combines, et cetera. But I guess if you're making that kind of investment, employing technology like SWAT Maps helps you make sure that you're getting the maximum utility out of that equipment, and that hopefully will lead to further productivity increases and better outcomes. So where, Cory, I think we're sort of at that time where we'd asked you to maybe talk a little bit about a hot take or something you see coming up in the future, or however you wanted to define it. And have you thought about what you'd like to say in that regard?
Yeah, well, just as you were just discussing, biology and genetics and those types of things, I think that there's a lot of opportunity in there for precision, because it's like everyone delivers something for the field average, right? And I always feel like, well, I only need something like, let's say it's salt affected soils. There's certain types of cover crops that will do well there. There's certain types of soil amendments that can be used there. There's actually within a certain crop survive and grow a few bushels. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's lots of opportunity, I feel, with like designing things for not just field averages, but for these extremes, help crops under those extremes, and we can go and precision apply those in those areas. I feel like very few companies have that type of target. I mean, for our own company, probably one of the biggest bottlenecks we have is soil testing. I think everybody across the globe has this challenge of soil testing right now is a person driving to the field with something and driving around and collecting a soil test. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge job. And for us in the fall, like tests. And so you've got a fleet of trucks and people and long hours, and it's very, very time consuming and expensive. So that's for us probably the next thing on the radar, that we've been working on tools, and I see there's a few other people too trying to come up with ways to automate that process, but it's very hard. Actually, everything with soils I find is much, much harder.
Well, it is dirt.
That's the next step for us.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that you're working on now for a next generation of innovation.
Sorry, what was that again, Clyde?
Sorry. So that's the kind of thing you're working on in terms of, advancing the logistics and the making it more cost effective for soil test, which I think we'd all like to see. I'm a big believer in soil test. Maybe you don't have to do it every year sometimes, but I think without that, very precise knowledge of what's going on in the soil, it is hard to get really good outcomes. And I just, I wish there were more soil labs in many parts of the world that where farmers are, don't have the kinds of yields that we have here in Canada or the United States or Europe. Well, that's great. That's a great hot take. I take it. I don't think we have any questions in the chat at this point. So that's. I think we can maybe come to an end. And thanks a lot, Cory, for sharing everything. And certainly, we are going to look for the next generation of Croptimistic products and services. It's going to be exciting, and we appreciate you being today. It's a good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. It was fun. Thanks.
Okay. Yurii, did you have some closing comments?
No, that was a great discussion. Cory, thank you for joining us. And I'm also quite a believer in precision ag technologies and the way Croptimistic approach field scanning. Also something we haven't discussed today, and I think it's going to be a good topic for our future discussion to talk about how retrofit hardware can help you to create precision ag maps. But for our audience, for everyone who has tuned in, and for all of the people who are going to listen to this podcast later this week, thank you for listening. I know that it's summertime, and a lot of, I guess, some of our audience are in the fields right now. But stay tuned for next episode in July, and you'll see more updates on our YouTube, LinkedIn, and Spotify.
Yeah, and if you want to find out more about Croptimistic, I encourage you to visit their website, where there's a lot of really good information about what Cory and his team are doing, and but also hopefully you'll join us again for our next episode, which we're coming up at the end of 2 years of Global Ag, Digital Ag Global, and so we're excited to get moving on a third year in late summer and the fall. So, but good guests like Cory help the podcast keep going. So thanks, Cory, and hope you have great yields this year.
Thank you. Cheers.